And new developments tonight in the case of a boy's remains found in a Kansas City, Kansas pig pen. 30-year-old Heather Jones pleaded guilty to the murder of her stepson today. 41 Action News investigator Andy Alcock is live with the latest on this case.
Krista, the story started last Thanksgiving when police found a boy's remains in a pig feeding area behind a rural KCK home. They believe those remains are those of A.J. Jones, a 7-year-old who had been reported missing. Further investigation revealed a history of chronic confinement and abuse of the 7-year-old. In court today, Heather Jones pleaded guilty to murder and 2 counts of child abuse. She'll be sentenced next month. In the meantime, A.J.'s father, Michael Jones, also faces murder charges. Today, a judge denied his request for a new attorney. Michael Jones is scheduled to go to trial in February. I'm investigator Andy Alcock, 41 Action News.
We're told by meteorologists that this band that is ever approaching the Daytona Beach area is going to give us a bit of a test here over the next hour, and we are starting to feel it, let me tell you. Now, you can see these palm trees behind me. These trees are facing out toward the ocean. Those behind me are facing away from the ocean, and that's because the wind is coming into this portico here, this alcove area near this hotel, and whipping around and hitting us. Now, the real concern, as you guys have been mentioning all morning, is the surge. That's the thing everyone is worried about here. I can tell you in the last 20 minutes, this ocean has churned up quite a bit. I don't know how well it's registering on the camera, but that water is getting ever closer to the seawall. Now, from noon to 1 o'clock Eastern time is when we're expecting the next high tide here. That is going to be a real critical hour for Daytona Beach and surrounding communities, because we could see potentially anywhere from 7 to 11 feet of storm surge. All of these small access roads that lead to the beach, and especially important, those water inlets that head inland to the intercoastal waterways, that water is going to rise rather rapidly. And so folks who have homes on the intercoastal waterway may look out 1 minute and see the water is where they always like to see it, and 2 minutes later it may be in their house. So the next 4 or 5 hours very critical here. Let's send it back up to you in New York.
All right, Ron Martin, Daytona Beach.
Jeff Gammons grew up in Florida. He's chased storms there for the last 20 years. He is with us now by Skype from Cocoa Beach. Jeff, good morning to you. Talk about this storm in comparison to others that you have followed throughout the years.
Good morning from Cocoa Beach, Florida, where light is just breaking. I was a little concerned about this storm, thinking that we could be looking at another Hurricane Charlie that I encountered over a decade ago in southwest Florida, which was a Category 4 hurricane. But thankfully, the eye of this storm has remained well offshore. We've been experiencing maybe the worst over the last hour here in Cocoa Beach, with Category 1 gusts and maybe a little bit sustained just on the threshold of Category 1. So thankfully, most of this has just remained, just offshore. There is a lot of power outages, a lot of power flashes, trees down, but I don't see any structural damage yet, but I haven't left the parking garage. So I should know that's pretty soon.
Jeff, did you hear or see a lot of people that didn't heed the warnings from the governor and others to get out of these low-lying coastal areas?
I'm sorry, I missed your...
Jeff, just wondering if you have seen people who apparently did not heed these evacuation orders, or is it pretty much empty at this point?
Actually, I originally started in Fort Pierce last night, down in the Treasure Coast part of Florida, north of Palm Beach. And then when we saw the eye was actually staying further offshore, I relocated up here to Cocoa Beach. I was the only one on the road. I didn't see anyone. It looks like everybody was gone by, I would say, 9, 10 o'clock. It was complete ghost town driving north up US 1 for almost 2 hours.
People obviously heed the evacuation warnings. Jeff, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
To Catherine Shakdam. She's the programs director of the Shafaqna Institute for Middle Eastern Studies, and she joins us via Skype from London. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Ms. Shakdam. Now, first of all, I'd like to get your opinion as far as Iraq's call for the removal of Turkish soldiers from its territory. You would think that Iraq would welcome any support being given to it to fight Daesh.
Well, I don't think it's a question of support against terrorism, which is the problem. I think it's just the way that Turkey is actually manifesting this help and offering this help. Because as far as I recall, I don't think that Baghdad actually asked for Ankara to get involved the way it had. And this is a problem that we're facing across the region. You know, this ability that certain powers have to actually completely dismiss other countries' sovereignty, territorial sovereignty. And in this case, in the case of Iraq, this is the problem which has arisen. It has nothing to do with counterterrorism. If anything, Iraq has called upon its front to help its troops to fight terrorism. I mean, this is the reason why Iran, for example, has actually offered its help. And will continue to do so because Iraq has actually asked for it. It has done so in keeping with international law. The same has been done in Syria with Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah. It was upon Damascus' call that certain powers got involved. And the problem with Turkey is that Turkey just decided to do it unilaterally, just because it felt like it, just because it has a certain agenda that it wants to protect and forward in the Middle East. It has nothing to do with counterterrorism. If anything, I would say that Turkey is trying to control the Kurdish issue and trying to manipulate the situation in such a way that it wants to ensure that its power will remain asserted in the region, that it will continue to carve away and at other people's territorial sovereignty to protect its own, which sounds a little bit hypocritical and quite frankly legally insane, because we're facing a lot of issues in regards to sovereignty. Only the problem is the UN is only standing with certain powers against others, not trying to actually abide by the rule of law by just stating what international law is stating is that every nation in the world is entitled to its own territorial integrity, and any violation is actually an act of war. It's as simple as that. So if anything, I would say that Iraq has been more than I would say calm about the situation. It is an act of war that Turkey has continued to actually do on the ground for more than a year now, and it wants to continue to do so for an extra year. So what about, has Iraq become a colony of Turkey? Is that the case where Turkey just decides what to do with its neighbors now because it has done so in Syria, so now Iraq? Who's next?
Right now, we've also seen Recep Tayyip Erdogan boldly state that Turkish forces will take part in the liberation of Mosul, as that offensive is being prepared by the Iraqi forces and the popular resistance movement. However, I'd like to get your opinion as far as what critics are saying when it comes to Turkey, that Turkey is not sincere in its fight against Daesh. Is that how you see it? And is it going to hamper then the liberation of Mosul if Turkey does get involved?
Well, I would say that no, Turkey hasn't been sincere when it comes to terrorism, because Turkey has played into has played the terror card to its advantage. But I think that after the failed coup d'état against President Erdogan, things have changed a little bit, where Turkey is trying to realign itself, on the sides of Russia, Iran, and other Asian powers, because it understands that the U.S. doesn't have its best interest at heart, and that the U.S. cannot be trusted anyway. So there's a bit of a real political realignment, or at least kind of Erdogan is kind of trying to re-envision his position in the Middle East and trying to assert, what lines he's going to follow. That being said, he's still not very sincere, and of course you can't just suddenly stop to be embedded with terror. With terror, he has Saudi Arabia to kind of contend with, and he can't just break away from under the clout of Saudi Arabia. So I think what you're seeing today is just an attempt maybe to kind of get away from terror, but he can't do that. Not after not. Because he has been so involved with terror. You can't just suddenly just decide to quit, just decide to change side. It doesn't work like this in politics, I'm afraid. And when you make a deal with the devil, he often comes to collect. So I think that Erdogan is pretty much stuck. As far as Turkey's ability to defeat terror, should he really want to, I would say I would be very careful personally. And I think that this is why Iraq has a problem with Turkey, because you can't really trust President Erdogan, because he himself is ideologically closer to Al Qaeda and the likes of Daesh than he is than to Iraq's benefits. So that's the big problem here.
Okay, let's see how this pans out. That's Catherine Shakdam, Programs Director of the Shafaqna Institute for Middle Eastern Studies, joining us via Skype from London. It's always great having you with us here on Press TV.
Heading into her South Sacramento home in late August, two robbers ambushed this Chinese-American woman, one covering her mouth while the other took her purse.
At nighttime, I don't go out no more because I'm scared.
Robberies like this targeting Asian Americans spiked in August, though this one occurred on Dolphin Fish Way, just outside city limits. Sacramento police reported 14 others within the city. Still more went unreported.
And number one thing is getting people to report those crimes when they have become a victim.
In the weeks that followed, both Sacramento police and community leaders organized a series of meetings, increasing awareness.
Just one end to the other.
Linda Ning is the former president of the Organization of Chinese Americans in Sacramento.
We're all coming together to listen, to learn, to hear what we can do to help each other.
The following month, Sacramento police reported 8 robberies targeting Asian Americans, a decrease of 43%.
We've put a lot of emphasis on our community engagement, reaching out to those folks in the community, opening dialogue that may not have been there before.
Well, this victim is still waiting for justice. She's speaking out.
No matter where you live, the neighborhood is very important to keep in touch for everybody. And then we see everything wrong, we can, helping each other.
Hoping to prevent crimes like this from happening to anyone else. Tom Miller, KCRA 3 News.